They were rich, extravagant, and devoured behind velvet ropes. Meals that defined red carpets, record deals, and royalty. Today, they're barely a footnote in food history. What happened to the dinners celebrities swore by, and why did they fade without a fight?
Few stars have stayed as true to their roots as Dolly Parton, and that includes her favorite food, homemade chicken and dumplings. During her Nashville rise in the 70s, and through her pop country crossover in the 80s, Dolly often spoke of this Southern staple as her ultimate comfort food. "I could eat it every day," she once said, and she wasn't kidding. Made with simple ingredients, flour, broth, shredded chicken, and a little lard or butter, it reminded her of her childhood in rural Tennessee. Even at Dollywood, the theme park she founded, chicken and dumplings remains one of the most beloved menu items. Dolly's version was hearty and thick, more like stew than soup, and always came with a big helping of love. While she's dined at the finest tables and toured the world, Dolly never gave up the flavors that raised her. If you ever wanted to taste home the way she knew it, you'd start with this dish. Glamorous, iconic, and endlessly photographed, Marilyn Monroe had a surprisingly modest breakfast during her heyday in the 1950s. Her favorite? 2 raw eggs whipped into a glass of warm milk. She claimed it kept her figure trim and gave her energy for long days on set. In a 1952 interview with Pageant magazine, Marilyn described her morning routine in detail, emphasizing simplicity and protein. This old-school protein shake might seem strange today, but in an era before smoothies and protein powders, it was a quick fix for nutrition and stamina. Later in the day, she favored broiled liver, steak, or lamb chops with a few carrots. She rarely snacked and had a famously light touch with dessert. While her image was larger than life, her diet was often minimalist, almost clinical. Yet it reflected a woman striving for control in a chaotic world. Today, Marilyn's legacy lives on, and so does the mystique of her quiet, disciplined palate.
At the height of his 90s country music reign, Garth Brooks was never shy about his love for Southern staples, especially biscuits smothered in sausage gravy. He often requested them backstage, at early morning TV appearances, or even as a late-night dinner. The meal, rich and hearty, reminded him of Oklahoma mornings and diner breakfasts with his parents. The biscuits had to be flaky, buttery, and warm, while the gravy was thick with crumbled sausage, black pepper, and just a touch of cream. It wasn't the healthiest option, but it was home on a plate. Garth believed in working hard and eating well, and this dish symbolized both. His road crew often joked that when biscuits and gravy were served, everyone knew it was going to be a good day. For a man who filled stadiums and smashed records, this humble breakfast proved that comfort food always wins, especially when it's wrapped in nostalgia and covered in gravy.
Elegant and poised, Jackie Kennedy's favorite breakfast during her years as First Lady was a plate of poached eggs with Melba toast and sliced grapefruit. Though raised in privilege, Jackie embraced clean, minimal meals, often favoring simplicity over indulgence. Her mornings at the White House typically began with this light but protein-packed combination. She believed in balance and presentation, and staff were instructed to prepare meals with quiet elegance, never excess. The soft texture of poached eggs and the crunch of Melba toast reflected her graceful nature, refined but accessible. Even at state dinners, her preferences leaned toward French-inspired dishes, light sauces, and subtle flavors. Her attention to culinary detail helped redefine White House dining, turning it into a showcase of understated American sophistication. For a woman under constant scrutiny, food became a quiet form of self-care and control. Long before directing Oscar-winning films, Clint Eastwood was Hollywood's quiet cowboy, and his favorite food was just as rugged: beef stew with root vegetables. On and off the set during the 1970s and 80s, Eastwood preferred meals that were simple, hearty, and didn't require fanfare. The stew featured tender chunks of beef simmered with carrots, potatoes, onions, and turnips in a thick, savory broth. It was slow food in every sense. Friends say he often cooked it himself while working on scripts or decompressing between projects. For Eastwood, the stew wasn't just nourishment, it was discipline. A man of few words and fewer frills, his food echoed his persona: reliable, bold, and unfussy. Even today, it's said he still enjoys this kind of meal, especially when spending time at his Carmel ranch. In a world of fast food and flash, Eastwood's stew reminds us, sometimes strength comes from tradition and a bowl of something warm.
In the late 1980s and early 90s, while redefining pop stardom, Madonna shocked fans not with her diet, but with its most consistent indulgence: French fries with ketchup. While she maintained a famously fit figure and strict training regimens, insiders revealed she couldn't resist a paper cone of
Crispy golden fries, especially after long rehearsals or late-night performances. She loved them hot, slightly salted, and always with a side of classic Heinz ketchup. In interviews, she acknowledged it was her guilty pleasure, though guilt rarely stopped her. Whether in Paris, Tokyo, or Detroit, fries were her universal craving. They were crunchy, satisfying, and completely unpretentious. Ironic for one of the most stylized stars of all time. In moments when the spotlight dimmed, fries brought her a taste of youth, freedom, and rebellion. For Madonna, they were more than a snack. They were a reminder that even the queen of reinvention sometimes just needed salt, grease, and a moment of pure, unapologetic joy.
In the 1950s, Marilyn Monroe stunned not just with her looks, but also with her surprisingly minimalist take on food. Her favorite home meal? Spaghetti tossed with raw eggs and warm milk, a proto-carbonara of sorts. Marilyn admitted in interviews that she wasn't much of a cook, but she did enjoy preparing this oddly simple dish in her hotel rooms using a portable hot plate. The spaghetti was cooked, drained, and quickly mixed with raw egg and hot milk, letting the heat gently create a creamy coating. It wasn't glamorous, but it was uniquely hers.
In an era of TV dinners and dainty diets, Marilyn's honesty about eating real, hearty food made her feel surprisingly grounded. Though she appeared to be the picture of Hollywood opulence, her culinary preferences were humble and comforting. This one-pot pasta was a favorite when she needed to feel full, cozy, and a little more in control of her famously chaotic life.
Known for revolutionizing technology, Steve Jobs had a surprisingly ascetic diet, often limited to raw fruits and vegetables. During his peak Apple years, he was particularly obsessed with carrot and apple salad, sometimes eating it for days at a time. Influenced by fruitarian beliefs and long periods of fasting, Jobs believed that eating light kept his mind sharp and focused. The salad was typically shredded green apple and carrot with lemon juice, sometimes a few raisins or nuts if he allowed variation. Friends and colleagues said his intense eating habits often mirrored his intense creative process.
While others were brainstorming over burgers, Jobs might be nibbling this Spartan blend while pacing barefoot through Apple headquarters. It wasn't indulgent, but it was consistent. He once believed that his fruit-heavy diet eliminated body odor. Love it or question it, this minimalist salad fed the mind that gave us the iPhone and redefined our world. From a salad of genius to the sweet tooth of a 1980s pop megastar, the next favorite dish is pure childhood joy in celebrity form. As both a Hollywood star and Princess of Monaco, Grace Kelly embodied refinement, and her favorite dish reflected it: quiche Lorraine. This savory tart, with a buttery crust and creamy filling of eggs, cream, bacon, and cheese, was a staple in Grace's royal kitchen. But it was also something she loved before becoming royalty. Friends from her Hollywood years remembered her ordering it at chic LA cafes or enjoying it during quiet lunches on set. Once she moved to Monaco, she often helped plan elegant garden parties where quiche Lorraine was served alongside chilled rose and fresh fruit. It became her signature comfort food, elegant but approachable, simple but satisfying. Grace reportedly enjoyed hers with a crisp green salad and light vinaigrette.
Quiche Lorraine, much like Grace herself, was timeless. It never tried too hard, and yet it always impressed. One bite brought together her American roots and European grace, a dish fit for both the silver screen and the crown.
During her reign as daytime's brightest smile, Ellen DeGeneres stuck close to her values, and that included
Her food, her go-to comfort: vegan tacos. After adopting a vegan lifestyle in the late 2000s, Ellen began exploring plant-based dishes that didn't compromise flavor. These tacos typically included walnut meat, black beans, avocado slices, shredded lettuce, and a lime cashew crema. Corn tortillas were her preference, often grilled for extra texture. What made vegan tacos Ellen's favorite was their flexibility. She could enjoy them for lunch, dinner, or even late-night snacks with friends. She once joked on air that tacos were the only thing she could cook without help. Her kitchen became a space for experimentation laughter, and staying true to her ethics.
While audiences saw her dancing through studios, her meals stayed grounded in balance and compassion. These tacos weren't just trendy, they were tasty, satisfying, and a little bit quirky, just like the woman who made kindness a national conversation.
The Queen of Soul brought power to every note and soul to every bite. Aretha Franklin's favorite meal during her touring years? Chitlins and cornbread.
Chitlins, pig intestines slow-cooked with vinegar, onions, and seasoning, were a staple of Southern black kitchens and an enduring symbol of resourceful, roots-based cooking. Aretha, raised in Detroit but steeped in gospel and Southern tradition, often requested this meal during long tours. Cornbread, golden and slightly sweet, balanced the earthy depth of the chitlins. Though she enjoyed other dishes like fried catfish and peach cobbler, chitlins remained her signature comfort food. Her crew recalled the smell of it wafting through dressing rooms and backstage lounges. This was food with history, food with grit, just like her voice. Aretha didn't need white tablecloths or fine dining. She wanted the food that fed her soul and reminded her of where she came from. Her plate, like her music, was unapologetically rich, bold, and full of truth.
With access to the world's finest foods, Oprah Winfrey still chooses one dish above most: truffle mac and cheese. Creamy, decadent, and just slightly earthy from black truffle oil, it's a blend of comfort and luxury, just like Oprah herself.
During her talk show years and beyond, she frequently mentioned mac and cheese as her ultimate guilty pleasure, but leave it to Oprah to elevate the dish. Her version includes sharp cheddar, Gruyere, a hint of nutmeg, and a whisper of truffle essence, baked until golden. She's been known to serve it at holiday parties and special events where guests line up for seconds. It's warm, rich, and nostalgic, yet sophisticated enough for fine dining. Oprah has said it reminds her of her grandmother's cooking, reimagined through the lens of everything she's learned along the way. It's food for the soul, but dressed up for success, just like her life story, rooted in struggle, flavored with triumph. Would you rather share Dolly's cornbread, Ali's pie, or Oprah's truffle mac? Which soulful dish speaks to your roots or dreams? Let us know in the comments. Rebel, heartthrob, and cultural icon, James Dean had all-American tastes to match his image. His favorite indulgence? A slice of apple pie and a tall glass of milk. Raised in Indiana and molded by Midwestern sensibilities, Dean kept things simple when it came to food. Even as he soared to fame in Rebel Without a Cause, he stayed true to his roots. He often visited diners, enjoying meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and that essential dessert: warm apple pie, preferably a la mode. The milk wasn't a trendy health move, it was what he'd grown up drinking. Friends remembered his quiet demeanor over meals, a mix of thoughtfulness and deep craving for familiarity. While his life was cut tragically short, the foods he loved evoke a time when fame hadn't yet erased the farm boy underneath. That slice of pie, served with no frills, was pure James Dean, honest, nostalgic, and unforgettable. Which of these vintage celebrity favorites would you try first, or have you already? Tell us your pick in the comments. We'd love to know whose plate you'd steal from.
Though he held the highest office in the land, President Ronald Reagan's favorite meal was classic, creamy macaroni and cheese. During his 1980s presidency, the White House kitchen was frequently called upon to make his preferred recipe. Baked with cheddar, butter, and just a hint of mustard powder. Reagan's love for the dish went back decades. Nancy Reagan once joked that if she didn't stop him, he'd eat it every day. Unlike many politicians who favored refined menus at state dinners, Reagan was proudly simple when it came to food. He liked what he liked, and mac and cheese sat at the top of the list.
Staffers noted that on long campaign trails, a warm tray of macaroni lifted his spirits. Though he represented California's glitz and Washington's power, Reagan's palate never strayed far from Midwestern sensibilities. And for a man known for big speeches, nothing said comfort like a small bowl of bubbling baked noodles.
Behind the boundless energy and rapid-fire humor, Robin Williams had a simple, enduring favorite: fresh-baked chocolate chip cookies. During his blockbuster run in the 80s and 90s, these cookies became both comfort and fuel. On film sets, he was often seen grabbing a few between takes, sometimes handing them out to crew members like edible morale boosts. He loved them warm, gooey in the center, with crisp edges and extra chocolate chips. His assistant reportedly kept a stash nearby at all times, knowing they could lift his spirits during long days.
While fans saw the comedy genius, close friends knew that cookies were his soft spot, literally and figuratively. They reminded him of childhood, of simpler times, and of his role as a father. Whether in the kitchen or backstage, chocolate chip cookies weren't just a treat. For Robin, they were a reminder of sweetness, nostalgia, and the small joys that made life worth all the laughter. Would you snack with Madonna on fries or share cookies with Robin Williams? Which craving would you go for, and what star would you want as your table mate? Smooth, velvety, and nostalgic, banana pudding was the favorite dessert of legendary crooner Nat King Cole. During his peak years in the 1940s and 50s, Cole traveled constantly but always asked for this Southern classic when he returned home. Made with layers of vanilla wafers, ripe bananas, and homemade vanilla custard, topped with whipped cream or meringue, it reminded him of his Alabama roots and family Sunday dinners. Nat often enjoyed it after big band rehearsals or during late-night jam sessions with fellow musicians. While he graced grand stages and black-tie galas, his dessert of choice stayed humble and heartfelt.
Friends say he would hum softly while spooning through each layer, a quiet moment of sweetness amid the intensity of his schedule. Banana pudding wasn't just a treat, it was part of his rhythm. Like his voice, it was smooth, layered, and full of soul. Whose favorite dish made you smile? Grace Kelly's quiche, Maya Angelou's roast chicken, or RDJ's redemption burger? Let us know which plate or poet speaks to your soul.
Old Blue Eyes didn't just sing about the good life, he ate like it too. Frank Sinatra's favorite dish during his Vegas years was clams posilipo, a Neapolitan seafood stew loaded with garlic, tomatoes, herbs, and of course, clams. Served piping hot with crusty bread, the dish hailed from the southern Italian coast, but became a fixture in New York and Jersey restaurants Sinatra loved, especially Patsy's in Manhattan. He'd often order it after a performance, washed down with Chianti or Jack Daniels. The dish was hearty yet elegant, spicy yet smooth. Much like Sinatra himself, he liked food with soul, with heritage, no trendy frills. His love for Italian-American cuisine shaped his persona as much as his tuxedo and swagger. When he sang about doing it my way, it included ordering clams posilipo even at late hours, his dinner table filled with laughter, loyalty, and a dish that reminded him of family, roots, and real-deal flavor. Next, we explore the plates behind two unforgettable women and a visionary director, each one as bold and memorable as their life's work. In the 1960s, as Bob Dylan changed the sound of American music, his go-to meal stayed firmly New York, a corned beef sandwich on rye with mustard and a sour pickle. Raised in Minnesota but forged in Greenwich Village, Dylan found solace in Jewish delis that offered heavy sandwiches and strong coffee. Katz's Delicatessen and other hole-in-the-wall spots became his refueling stations between writing sessions and coffeehouse gigs. He loved the dense rye bread, the tang of the mustard, and the savory heft of corned beef. Always warm, never lean. It wasn't healthy, but it was grounding. For a man lost in lyrics, this sandwich was meat and meaning. Many fans claim to have seen him scribbling lyrics with a sandwich in one hand and a black coffee in the other. In an era of change, Dylan clung to tradition, at least on his plate. Music was revolution, but lunch? Lunch was ritual. Next up, a pop icon's guilty pleasure, a Hollywood icon's midnight snack, and a comedian's perfectly sweet obsession. You might be surprised who kept cookies close. It may sound surprising, but Robert Downey Jr. credits a fast food meal, Burger King cheeseburgers, with helping him turn his life around. At his lowest point in the early 2000s, while battling addiction, he stopped at a Burger King drive-thru and received a cheeseburger so bad, he later said it made him question everything. It became a symbolic turning point. Years later, after his successful return to stardom, he kept referencing the cheeseburger, especially during Iron Man press tours. In fact, in the original Iron Man film, Tony Stark's first request after being rescued is for, you guessed it, a Burger King cheeseburger. RDJ has since shared that while he enjoys gourmet food, nothing beat the raw, real impact that burger had on his life. It wasn't the flavor, it was the moment. A greasy cheeseburger may not seem profound, but for Downey, it marked the beginning of redemption.
Sometimes the smallest meals leave the biggest mark.
As radical and poetic as John Lennon could be, his breakfast choice during his Beatles fame was surprisingly plain. Cornflakes topped with heavy cream and sugar. While touring in the 1960s, he was known to request this humble meal in hotel suites and backstage areas, sometimes even in the afternoon. Lennon often blended idealism with everyday simplicity, and this bowl of cereal reflected just that. No fancy muesli, no avocado toast, just a kid from Liverpool favorite upgraded with thick cream and a generous sprinkle of sweetness. His love for tea and toast also remained consistent throughout his fame years. Despite global attention, Lennon found comfort in familiar tastes. It was said that this particular breakfast reminded him of his Aunt Mimi's kitchen and slower mornings before the chaos of Beatlemania.
Food wasn't about spectacle for John. It was memory, rootedness, and a way to stay grounded amid global adoration. A bowl of cornflakes never sounded so meaningful. Next, we head into the kitchens of a comedy queen, a crooning heartthrob, and a first lady whose food choices made headlines.
More than a celebrated poet and author, Maya Angelou was also a gifted cook, and during her years of literary fame, her favorite meal was roast chicken with balsamic glaze. She often prepared it herself, blending art and nourishment into one act. Her version included garlic, rosemary, balsamic vinegar, and honey, creating a dish that was deeply flavorful yet balanced. She believed that cooking was as much a form of love and expression as poetry. In interviews, Maya described sharing this dish with friends during small, thoughtful dinners, moments where conversation flowed as richly as the glaze. The crisp skin, the aroma of herbs, and the sweetness of the vinegar were all sensory pleasures she never took for granted. For a woman whose voice stirred nations, her cooking stirred hearts at home. Roast chicken with balsamic glaze wasn't flashy, but it fed people in every way: body, memory, and soul. Even while holding the presidency, Barack Obama kept his taste buds rooted in home cooking, especially when it came to his all-time favorite, homemade chili. He's been making the same recipe since college, and it includes ground turkey or beef, kidney beans, peppers, garlic, and a touch of spice. During his campaigns, chili was a frequent dinner choice: quick, satisfying, and shareable.
He even cooked it for Michelle early in their dating years. As president, he still requested it during family nights at the White House, or when friends came over to watch sports. Barack's chili wasn't flashy or chefy. It was grounded, hearty, and dependable. Much like his leadership style, it was built on substance, not flair. Served with rice, cornbread, or crackers, it filled the room with warmth and familiarity. For a man under constant pressure, one bowl of chili offered peace, nostalgia, and control. And yes, he always made enough for seconds. If you had to pick just one of these celebrity favorites to try, which would it be? Freddie's fiery Dansek,
Aretha's soulful chitlins, or Obama's no-fuss chili? Tell us below. Elegant on screen and graceful in life, Audrey Hepburn's favorite food was delightfully simple: spaghetti al pomodoro, pasta with tomato sauce. Despite her globe-trotting life and refined image, Audrey often requested this dish from her personal chefs, and even cooked it herself when possible. She loved the classic combination of fresh tomatoes, garlic, basil, and olive oil. Her son, Luca Dotti, once shared that Audrey found peace in preparing and eating this meal, especially during her quieter years in Switzerland. It reminded her of post-war Rome and the joy of nourishment after scarcity. She believed in food that felt light but satisfying, never overdone. Spaghetti al pomodoro wasn't just her favorite. It was a daily ritual, sometimes eaten for lunch with a green salad and a glass of water. Audrey Hepburn remains a style icon, but this plate proves her beauty wasn't in extravagance. It was in authenticity. Simple ingredients prepared with love. A pasta dish worthy of a timeless star.
At the height of her 1980s superstardom, Whitney Houston's favorite comfort food wasn't fancy. It was a big bowl of spaghetti with meat sauce. Raised in a musical, church-going family in New Jersey, Whitney carried her love of home-cooked meals into fame. Her go-to version included ground beef, sautéed onions, tomato sauce, and a generous sprinkle of Parmesan cheese. In interviews, she often mentioned missing homemade meals while touring and would ask family to cook for her when she came home. Spaghetti reminded her of family dinners, laughter around the table, and a time before paparazzi and pressure. It was hearty, flavorful, and grounded,
much like the woman behind that soaring voice. During long recording sessions, Whitney's team often ordered spaghetti just to keep her mood high and her energy stable. For someone with one of the most powerful voices in music history, her favorite meal was refreshingly every day. Just one plate, and you could almost hear her hum between bites. Despite her royal status, Princess Diana had a famously sweet tooth, especially for traditional British desserts like bread and butter pudding. During her 1980s and 90s reign as the People's Princess, Diana often requested this humble dessert from her chefs at Kensington Palace. Made with layers of buttered bread, cream, eggs, and raisins, it was simple, warm, and nostalgic, something she'd loved since childhood. Chef Darren McGrady, who cooked for the royal family, confirmed it was one of her absolute favorites, especially when finished with a dusting of nutmeg and served slightly warm. Diana's refined public image never eclipsed her private craving for homey food that evoked comfort and care. Amid royal pressures, this dessert was more than indulgence. It was therapy in a bowl. With every spoonful, she could retreat from the spotlight just for a moment. For someone who touched the world through quiet kindness, her dessert of choice reflected that same quiet magic, rich, gentle, and deeply human. At the height of her rise in the 1980s and 90s, Oprah Winfrey never strayed far from the Southern soul food she grew up with. Her ultimate comfort combo, cornbread and black-eyed peas. It wasn't a flashy dish, but it was deeply meaningful, tied to her Mississippi roots and the women who raised her. Oprah often spoke about sitting at her grandmother's table, where the cornbread was baked in a cast-iron skillet and the peas simmered slowly with onion and smoked meat. During her most successful years, she leaned into healthier eating, but never gave up the essence of her favorite dishes. Just reimagine them. Her chefs would prepare lower-sodium peas and whole-grain cornbread, but the love stayed the same. Even with fame, wealth, and global influence, Oprah understood the power of memory on a plate. Cornbread and black-eyed peas weren't just food. They were legacy, proof that no matter how far she soared, she never lost touch with where she began.
Old Blue Eyes had impeccable taste in music and in food. During his Rat Pack years, Frank Sinatra's favorite dish was clams posilipo, a Neapolitan seafood classic made with clams steamed in garlic, tomatoes, olive oil, white wine, and herbs. He first fell in love with it in New York's Little Italy and often requested it at Italian joints in LA and Vegas. Sinatra was fiercely loyal to certain restaurants and even had dishes made specially for him. Patsy's in New York became a go-to, where chefs knew exactly how he liked his clams. Spicy, garlicky, and served with crusty bread to soak up the sauce.
Frank's Italian-American roots showed up in his menu choices: veal parmigiana, pasta e fagioli, and of course, clams posilipo. To him, food was family. Meals were long, loud, and full of laughter. If you wanted to dine like Sinatra during his glory days, you started with the clams and ended with a song. Next up, a Hollywood legend whose pasta game was strong and a rebel whose favorite treat was pure Americana.
In and out of the ring, Muhammad Ali had a soft spot for a classic Southern treat, sweet potato pie. While training took him across the globe, home was always Kentucky, and pie was always the way to his heart.
Friends and family recall how Ali would light up when someone baked one just right. Silky filling, warm spices, flaky crust, and topped with whipped cream. It reminded him of holidays, of Mama's kitchen, and of rest days when life wasn't all jabs and jump ropes. During his boxing prime in the 1960s and 70s, trainers tried to keep his diet lean, but Ali always made room for a slice, especially after a win. The champ didn't need gold-plated meals. He needed soul food, and for Ali, sweet potato pie was as comforting as a crowd chanting his name. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. But when it came to dessert, Ali just wanted a slice of home. Coming up, a pop star's breakfast obsession, a talk show titan's guilty pleasure, and a sci-fi captain who always craved something sweet after saving the galaxy. Behind the red lipstick and slapstick antics, Lucille Ball loved a hearty plate of roast beef with gravy. During the height of I Love Lucy, her favorite comfort meal was a Sunday-style dinner: slow-roasted beef, brown gravy, mashed potatoes, and green beans. She often dined at Chasen's in Hollywood, a hot spot for stars,
where this dish was a house favorite and often prepared just the way Lucy liked it, simple
and satisfying. Despite her television fame and glamorous wardrobe, Lucy never strayed far from classic American cuisine. She also loved homemade spaghetti and buttered toast, but roast beef reigned supreme when it came to real indulgence. To her, food wasn't just sustenance. It was ritual, warmth, and family. Her dinner table wasn't a stage. It was a safe place to unwind after long shoots and exhausting rehearsals. With each forkful of savory beef and rich gravy, Lucy got to be just Lucille, no audience required.
When Elvis Presley ruled the stage and the silver screen, he wasn't just shaking his hips. He was also devouring one of the most legendary guilty pleasures in food history. The king of rock and roll had a soft spot for fried peanut butter, banana, and bacon sandwiches, known to his inner circle as the Elvis Special. Served hot and gooey, sometimes grilled in butter, this decadent dish was his late-night go-to. It blended salty, sweet, and smoky into a melt-in-your-mouth explosion. Elvis reportedly had these sandwiches flown in from Denver to Memphis, once ordering 22 at a time for a spontaneous food binge. While dietitians might cringe, fans and foodies still recreate the Elvis sandwich today in tribute. During the 1960s and 70s, as his fame skyrocketed, so did the popularity of this outrageous comfort food. It wasn't just a snack, it was part of his legend. Love him tender? Try loving what was on his plate. Despite being one of the most electrifying performers of all time, Michael Jackson's favorite meal was something much humbler: barbecued chicken with mashed potatoes. During the Thriller and Bad years, he'd request this comforting combo backstage, at hotels, or after exhausting rehearsals. The chicken was usually slathered in a sweet, sticky sauce and served with buttery mashed potatoes and steamed vegetables. Though his persona was futuristic and ethereal, MJ's food preferences were grounded, soulful, southern, and deeply familiar. He loved simple meals that reminded him of childhood dinners and family gatherings in Gary, Indiana. It wasn't uncommon for his team to bring along his own chef while on tour, just to ensure the meal was prepared exactly the way he liked it. While the moonwalk and sequined gloves dazzled the world, barbecued chicken and potatoes grounded him. That one plate of food, simple, warm, and filling, was a small piece of normal in a life lived on a global stage.
No list of favorite celebrity foods would be complete without Elvis Presley's legendary fried peanut butter and banana sandwich. During the 1970s, as Elvis spent more time at Graceland, this sandwich became a near-daily indulgence. The king liked it cooked in a skillet with plenty of butter, sometimes with crispy bacon added for extra decadence. He was so devoted to the dish, his personal chef, Mary Jenkins Langston, kept the ingredients on standby 24/7. Elvis often requested it late at night or after a performance. It wasn't diet-friendly, but it was deeply nostalgic, reminding him of simpler days in Mississippi. Rich, warm, sweet, and salty, the sandwich captured everything about Elvis. Bold, over the top, and unforgettable. Though often imitated, few versions match the indulgence of the king's favorite. To this day, fans make pilgrimages to Graceland just to taste it. Because sometimes, true rock and roll comes with a thick smear of peanut butter and a fried banana. Coming up next, a Beatles vegetarian favorite, a sci-fi legend's breakfast obsession, and a cowboy star's humble dinner dish that might surprise you.
Dolly Parton, queen of country and southern charm, has always been proud of her Appalachian roots. One dish she never stopped loving, even after becoming a global superstar, was stone-ground cornbread with a side of slow-cooked pinto beans. Growing up in rural Tennessee with 11 siblings, this simple meal was a staple of survival and love. Dolly's cornbread had to be crusty on the outside, moist on the inside, and baked in a cast-iron skillet. The beans, simmered for hours with onion, maybe a ham hock if times were good. She often talks about how meals like this were all they had, but also all they needed. Even today, Dolly says she prefers a bowl of beans over fine dining. She's hosted famous guests with nothing more than a pot of beans, buttered cornbread, and that signature warmth. This dish isn't just food, it's her story. Humble, hearty, and real. Just like the woman who never forgot where she came from.
During the 1990s, when Julia Roberts reigned as America's sweetheart, her favorite breakfast was a tall stack of pancakes with real maple syrup. After late-night shoots or on rare mornings off, She was known to seek out diners, often anonymously, where she could indulge in fluffy golden pancakes slathered with butter. It wasn't an everyday ritual, but more of a joyful splurge. Friends say she loved the ritual of it, the slow pour of syrup, the smell of hot griddle cakes, and the first bite that soaked up everything. Even after her role in Pretty Woman made her a global icon, she never gave up her taste for diner-style breakfasts. Whether filming in New York or hiding away in Taos, New Mexico, pancakes were her happy food, nostalgic, warm, and unpretentious. While her life became larger than life, Julia's food choice stayed grounded in joy, and for one morning meal, she was just a girl, with pancakes. Up next, we enter kitchens of two megastars, one a country king, the other a global girl power icon, both with surprisingly old-school favorites. In the peak of Beatlemania and beyond, Paul McCartney found comfort not in the lavish meals of fame, but in mashed potatoes with onion gravy, vegetarian, rich, and filling. After becoming a vegetarian in the 1970s alongside his late wife Linda, Paul often talked about how they reinvented traditional British meals to fit their lifestyle. This one remained his favorite: buttery mashed potatoes made with milk alternatives and a thick, savory onion gravy simmered with herbs and veggie stock. It was hearty, easy to make on the road, and reminded him of family dinners in Liverpool. Paul never cared much for complicated food. He loved dishes that fed both the body and soul. Today, he still champions plant-based eating, but this simple meal remains at the heart of his culinary memory. For a man who helped change the world's music, his ideal comfort dish never needed a stage, just a spoon, a plate, and someone you love to share it with. Despite her petite frame and glamorous image, Audrey Hepburn adored pasta, especially spaghetti al pomodoro, a simple dish of spaghetti with fresh tomato sauce, basil, olive oil, and parmesan. Even during her peak fame in the 1950s and 60s, she would prepare it herself, especially while living in Switzerland or visiting Rome. Audrey's son, Luca Dotti, later revealed that this dish wasn't just a favorite, it was a staple in their home. Her recipe was delightfully minimalist. No heavy cream, no meatballs, just honest ingredients and lots of love. Audrey believed in balance and ate well without excess. She was known to enjoy chocolate and scotch too, but pasta was her culinary constant. It reminded her of her time in post-war Europe and the comfort of nourishing food. In a world that often pressured women to eat less, Audrey ate smart and with joy. She proved that elegance didn't mean denying yourself delicious, soulful meals. In the height of his fame during the 1980s, Michael Jackson often turned to the comfort of Southern soul food, especially barbecued chicken with collard greens. Raised in Gary, Indiana by a musical family with deep Southern roots, Michael's favorite meals echoed the flavors of his childhood. He liked his chicken marinated, sweet and smoky, grilled to perfection, and served with garlicky, tender collard greens on the side. Despite the glitz of Neverland Ranch and the global spotlight, Michael reportedly kept these home-style favorites in rotation, even flying in chefs who could make them just right. Food was one of the few places he felt safe and grounded. It reminded him of family dinners with the Jackson Five, of warmth and rhythm that started at the table. While he moonwalked across stages, his plate stayed rooted in soul. Barbecued chicken wasn't just a meal. It was memory, music, and comfort served hot. Up next, a poet's picnic, a Marvel hero's private craving, and a classic crooner whose favorite dessert was almost as smooth as his voice. The larger-than-life frontman of Queen, Freddie Mercury, had a soft spot for a traditional Parsi dish from his childhood, chicken dansak. A rich, spiced curry made with lentils, vegetables, and chicken, it blended Persian and Indian flavors, sweet, tangy, and deeply comforting. Born Farooq Bulsara, Freddie grew up in a Parsi household in Zanzibar in India, where this dish was often served on Sundays and special occasions. Even during his meteoric fame in the 1970s and 80s, he remained fiercely nostalgic for the food of his roots. Close friends and his longtime chef confirmed that dansak was one of the few meals that could make Freddie pause, smile, and completely relax. He often enjoyed it with brown rice and a glass of wine after long studio sessions. While he ruled stages in leather and glitter, this humble, home-cooked dish spoke to the quieter man behind the fame.
a man who never forgot where his fire came from.
In the early 2000s, as Britney Spears skyrocketed to global superstardom, her favorite food stayed firmly rooted in childhood: fried chicken tenders with honey mustard dipping sauce. Even at her fame peak, she was candid about loving simple fast food, especially crispy chicken, fries, and sugary drinks. Chicken tenders were her go-to after long rehearsals, between tour stops, or as a reward after a demanding performance. Paired with tangy sweet honey mustard, the combo became legendary among her crew. In interviews, she mentioned missing home-cooked Southern meals from her Louisiana upbringing, but tenders always hit the craving fast. While others tried to curate a polished image, Britney's honesty about food made her even more relatable. This wasn't about haute cuisine, it was about joy, comfort, and treating yourself. And in a world constantly telling her what to be, a box of tenders let her just be Britney, free, fun, and hungry for a little peace. Which meal hits your comfort zone? Garth's biscuits and gravy or Britney's crispy chicken tenders? Tell us your pick and what memory it brings back for you.
Before his tragic death at 24, James Dean was America's rebel heartthrob, but at the table, he was all small-town charm. His favorite indulgence? A thick slice of apple pie with a glass of cold milk. Raised in Indiana, Dean's tastes never drifted far from his roots. Even when filming in Hollywood, he sought out diners and roadside cafes that served homemade pie. He liked it served warm, with crust that crackled and filling that wasn't too sweet. Milk, never coffee, was his go-to drink, a comfort left over from childhood breakfasts. Friends said that after long motorcycle rides or late-night shoots, this simple dessert grounded him. He may have played brooding misfits on screen, but in life, his cravings were pure Americana. For a man who lived fast and left too soon, apple pie and milk felt like his pause button, a moment to breathe, remember home, and taste something real in a world that moved too quickly.
Long before she became a culinary legend, Julia Child fell in love with French cuisine the moment she tasted sole meunière in 1948, and it remained her favorite food throughout her fame. The dish was simple yet perfect. Fresh Dover sole, lightly floured and pan-fried in butter, then served with lemon and parsley. That first bite in a Rouen restaurant was what she called a culinary epiphany. It transformed her life's purpose and inspired her to bring French cooking to America. During her TV years, she often returned to the dish as both teacher and diner. Sole meunière represented everything she believed about food, that it should be fresh, beautifully prepared, and joyfully eaten. Even when surrounded by fame, Julia's favorite meal reminded her of her beginnings, not as a star, but as a curious eater. It's fitting that the woman who introduced a nation to coq au vin and boeuf bourguignon fell hardest for a dish so simple, so elegant, so delicious. Which meal would you rather try? Julia Child's elegant sole, Paul's vegetarian gravy, or Elvis's deep-fried peanut butter sandwich? Tell us whose plate you'd pick and why. While Bruce Lee was known for martial arts mastery and cinematic charisma, his favorite meal was surprisingly classic Cantonese: beef with oyster sauce and white rice. During his years of fame in the 1960s and early 70s, this dish was his go-to comfort food. Simple, satisfying, and full of flavor. It combined thin-sliced marinated beef with crisp green vegetables, stir-fried in a rich, savory oyster sauce. It reflected both his Hong Kong heritage and his appreciation for balanced nutrition. Bruce believed food was fuel for both mind and body, and preferred meals high in protein, moderate in carbs, and full of nutrients. But this dish wasn't just strategic, it was emotional. It reminded him of home, of his childhood in Kowloon, and of late-night meals shared with family. Even during Hollywood shoots, he often sought out local Chinese restaurants to recreate it. For Bruce, this dish delivered nourishment, nostalgia, and the strength of his roots. Which of these icons would you share a meal with? Dolly's dumplings, Bruce Lee's beef, or Oprah's soulful plate? Let us know whose dinner table you'd pull up a chair to. In the 1980s, as Elvis Costello became a defining voice in punk and new wave, his favorite food remained resolutely British: traditional fish and chips wrapped in newspaper. A native of London, Costello never abandoned the charm of a perfectly battered cod with crispy chips soaked in malt vinegar. Touring across the US and Europe, He often joked that what he missed most was the greasy spoon authenticity of English chip shops. Even when his lyrics were politically barbed or musically layered, his food preference was classic and unpretentious. At the height of his fame, Costello was frequently spotted at local London haunts during his off days, always ordering the same dish. Whether enjoyed on a rainy street corner or in a quiet pub, fish and chips grounded him in a heritage of working-class resilience and childhood nostalgia. For a man of fierce opinions and sharp wit, the flaky crunch of battered cod was pure, uncomplicated pleasure.
Bruce Lee wasn't just a martial arts icon. He was a food lover with deep roots in Cantonese cuisine. His all-time favorite dish was beef stir-fried with oyster sauce, served over steamed white rice.
It was flavorful, protein-rich, and quick to prepare, perfect for his intense training schedule. Even after moving to America and reaching worldwide fame, Lee often sought out Chinese restaurants or home-cooked meals that reminded him of his roots. He liked his beef thinly sliced, tender, and coated with that savory, sweet oyster glaze, accompanied by crisp vegetables like bok choy or bell peppers. According to his wife Linda, Bruce was passionate about food, often cooking at home and experimenting with sauces. While he trained like a machine, he ate like a man who understood balance. This dish wasn't just comfort food, it was fuel for the body and soul. For Bruce Lee, every bite was discipline, tradition, and a touch of home on a plate.
As First Lady during the Obama administration, Michelle Obama became known for her advocacy of healthy eating, but her favorite dish stayed practical and flavorful: grilled chicken over quinoa salad. This power-packed meal was a regular lunch for Michelle during her Let's Move campaign years. The dish combined lean grilled chicken with quinoa, arugula, cherry tomatoes, lemon juice, olive oil, and fresh herbs. Not only did it align with her public health messaging, but it also gave her energy to power through non-stop days of speeches,
Travel, and outreach. Michelle often talked about her desire to set an example for her daughters, choosing whole, nutritious foods that were still enjoyable. Even at White House dinners, she favored clean, simple dishes over complex gourmet menus. This wasn't just a favorite food, it was a message that wellness could be accessible, empowering, and delicious. And if the First Lady of the United States could love quinoa, so could the rest of us. Coming up next, a talk show icon's sweet fix, a rock legend's guilty pleasure, and one queen of soul whose favorite dish fed the world her fire.
For someone with a salad dressing empire, Paul Newman's real favorite snack was far less expected: freshly popped popcorn tossed with melted butter and grated Parmesan cheese. During the 1970s and 80s, Newman often snacked on this while reading scripts or watching movies at home. Despite his matinee idol looks and award-winning performances, Newman was refreshingly down-to-earth, and his food choices reflected that. He reportedly made popcorn the old-fashioned way: stovetop with a big pot, a splash of oil, and a quick shake. He loved adding a pinch of garlic salt and a generous amount of parm, making it both savory and satisfying. Though his Newman's Own brand became a household name, his favorite popcorn combo never hit the product line. It stayed a personal pleasure, best served in a giant bowl with a cold beer and good company. For a man who gave away all his profits, this small indulgence was just for him, and it was perfect.
The master of suspense had a masterful palate, too. Alfred Hitchcock's favorite meal was a beautifully roasted chicken infused with thyme, lemon, and butter. During the 1950s and 60s, at the height of his filmmaking career, Hitchcock often requested roast chicken from studio kitchens or private chefs. It was flavorful, comforting, and, much like his movies, perfectly structured. He reportedly believed the meal was ideal for both digestion and conversation, two things he prized while entertaining. The skin had to be crisp, the inside juicy, and the aroma absolutely irresistible. Hitchcock was said to pair it with simple sides like green beans or roasted potatoes, followed by a stiff drink and good gossip. For a man who built suspense one frame at a time, roast chicken offered a moment of delicious calm. It was classic, consistent, and satisfying. Just like his films, it never disappointed. A timeless meal for a timeless creator. Which of these stars would you dine with? Barbara over ice cream, Hitchcock over chicken, or Diana over dessert? Drop your pick. We're saving you a seat at the table.
During her peak fame in the 60s and 70s, Barbra Streisand's favorite treat wasn't caviar or foie gras. It was coffee ice cream. She loved the bold flavor and creamy texture, often choosing it for dessert at home and on tour. Friends and assistants recall that she always kept it stocked in her freezer, even during stricter diet phases. A scoop at night became her way of unwinding. Streisand, a perfectionist in music and film, found rare ease in the quiet joy of dessert. Coffee ice cream, with its bittersweet notes and rich mouthfeel, matched her personality, sophisticated, bold, slightly unconventional. While she was often surrounded by glitz and applause, this dessert reminded her of simpler pleasures. It wasn't performative, it was personal.
Many who dined with her were surprised by how often she passed over fancier options for it. But for Barbara, the elegance wasn't in extravagance. It was in knowing exactly what brought you joy and savoring it slowly.
The pop princess hit #1. Britney Spears was a Southern girl with a very specific breakfast favorite: hot grits with butter and sugar. Raised in Kentwood, Louisiana, Britney grew up on hearty, humble foods. While grits are usually served savory, Britney preferred them sweet, soft, buttery, and sprinkled generously with sugar. Even during her rise to fame in the late 90s and early 2000s, she would ask for this childhood favorite on tour or during studio sessions. It reminded her of home, mornings with her mom, and the quiet before the chaos. Tour staff even kept instant grits in the dressing room for quick fixes. While paparazzi snapped pictures of her with lattes and salads, behind the scenes, she was still reaching for that warm, sweet bowl. Grits with sugar may confuse some, but to Britney, it was comfort food at its purest, a dish as honest and Southern as her early smile before the world turned loud.
During his time as Spock on Star Trek, Leonard Nimoy often started his mornings with scrambled eggs and lox, a classic protein-rich breakfast from his Jewish upbringing. Raised in Boston's immigrant neighborhoods, Nimoy carried the tastes of tradition with him into Hollywood. Lox, salt-cured salmon, added a salty, rich kick to soft eggs, sometimes folded into an onion bagel or served with tomato slices. It wasn't fancy, but it was satisfying. On filming days, it gave him the steady energy he needed for long hours under prosthetics and intense sets. Nimoy's choice reflected his roots: culturally rich, enduring, and deeply personal. Even as he grew into a sci-fi icon, he stayed connected to who he was before fame: Leonard, the boy from Boston who loved poetry, storytelling, and his mother's kitchen. Scrambled eggs with lox, logical and emotional, just like the man who made Live Long and Prosper feel like more than fiction.
If these iconic celebrity dinners made you hungry for a different time, let us know below.
Tap like to keep their memory on the menu, and subscribe for more legendary dishes.